the cold vacuum of space, where human defiance appears as nothing more than colorful splashes against the impenetrable shield of a behemoth. Captain Calliope Collie Cross stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Fleet corvette Scrapewing, a vessel held together by hope and emergency sealant, facing certain annihilation. Before her, the judgment of lances hung in the star-dusted blackness, not merely a starship, but a monument to destruction stretching 20 kilometers across space, absorbing humanity's most powerful weapons with insulting indifference. The battle was already lost. Around the Scrapewing, humanity's makeshift fleet, retrofitted haulers, cranky asteroid miners, and atmosphere-bound gunships pressed into desperate service, was being methodically disassembled. The Triton had been neatly cleaved by a single beam of incandescent gold. The Dauntless bled its atmosphere from a dozen weeping wounds. This wasn't combat. It was execution. On the Scrapewing's bridge, every console shrieked warnings of imminent catastrophic failure. The ship had already lost its dorsal plating on 3 decks, and the Steadfast was simply gone, not destroyed, but erased from existence. Through it all, Captain Cross maintained a calm island amidst the ocean of panic, her face bathed in the frantic red wash of alert klaxons as she studied their impossible FODOT at the weapons console. Breaker, a man-shaped conglomeration of muscle, resentment, and chrome, struggled to find any weakness in the alien vessel. His cybernetic left eye, capable of seeing in 6 different spectra of violence, whirred in frustrated failure. "Scratch it," he finally admitted, the words torn from him like a violation. Her point defense is clairvoyant. Slugs are confetti. Lasers are mood lighting. With heartbeats, not minutes remaining, Captain Cross made her decision. It was time for the Hail Mary, the stupidest, most desperate, most beautifully human idea ever conceived in a lab full of stimulant patches and despair. She keyed the ship-wide comb, her thumb pressing the button with the weary finality of someone ordering the same disappointing takeout. For the 3rd night in a row, Collie to the grease pit. Fenris, the universe is calling our bluff. Light the candle. Deep in the chaotic engine room, Venerus Vulov snapped his head up from a console, actively trying to set him on fire. His lank hair stood on end, his eyes wide with terrifying intellectual fervor behind oil-smudged goggles. "Captain, no?" he shouted back in panic. The fracture torpedoes weren't rated for interactive deflector field contact. The causality initiator might create a feedback loop. The simulation suggested immediate dissolution into exotic particles, but Captain Cross cut through his frantic monologue with surgical precision. "Light it." Fen, with a muttered prayer to the patron saint of reckless innovation, Venerus slammed the protective acrylic cover down over the launch trigger, a comically large candy-red button he had fought for, and mashed it with his grease-stained hand. The Scrapewing convulsed, not with the familiar kick of a missile launch, but with a gut-wrenching lurch, its entire frame shifting 3 meters to starboard without any corresponding thrust, as if the universe had blinked and put it back in the wrong spot. 9 projectiles materialized, moving like errors in the cosmic code, crossing vast distances without seeming to travel at all. These weren't ordinary torpedoes. Reverse-engineered from a fragment of a full drive found in a derelict alien ship, they were designed to poke tiny transient holes in the fabric of SPACET. What happened next defied all expectations. The torpedoes didn't bounce off the judgment of Lance's shields. They burrowed in, drawing the energy field's titanic power into their reality-warping cores. The effect multiplied a millionfold in a nanosecond. The shimmering ripples in space-time lost cohesion, tore open, and coalesced into a vortex of anti-light, a patch of absolute nothingness that drank the stars behind it. The invincible dreadnought flickered like a faulty hologram, its form distorting, stretching, and compressing in ways that made the human eye water and the brain throb. The dagger-like silhouette folded, twisted, and then inverted, collapsing inward toward the 9 points of pure negation on its shield. It vanished with a sound that wasn't a sound at all, but rather the sudden jarring cessation of all other noise, a plink of silence in the symphony of battle. Profound stillness descended like a shroud, smothering the chaos. The alarms on the Scrapewing's bridge stuttered and died. The remaining Earth Defense Fleet ships drifted in the blackness, weapons cold, their crews staring at the empty patch of space where a mountain range of a warship had been moments before. The starfield behind it was perfect, unblemished, as if the Valarak dreadnought had been nothing more than a bad dream. The comms channel detonated with stunned, disbelieving voices. Admiral Zhao demanded an explanation for how a vessel the size of a small moon had just vanished from reality. But before Captain Cross could formulate a response, Fenris's voice trickled over the internal comm, thin and shaky with dread. "That's not what it was supposed to do," he whispered. "The energy cascade, the resonance feedback from their shields. It didn't poke a hole in the ship." He took a ragged, hitching breath. "It poked a hole under it. We didn't destroy it, Captain. We ... We pushed it sideways into the attic of the universe." A chilling realization crystallized in Callie's mind. They hadn't won a battle. They had just rung a galactic dinner bell, announcing the arrival of a species that could make invincible warships disappear. And they had done it by tripping over their own shoelaces. They hadn't just unleashed something far weirder and more dangerous on the galaxy. They had just become it. News travels fast in the cosmos. When brokered by the Argosy Syndicate, it travels at the speed of profit, orders of magnitude faster than light itself. The battered Scrapewing limped toward a classified repair depot in the asteroid belt, its crew watching the galactic news feed in stunned silence. A multi-limbed Argosy anchor with a synthesized purr that could sell sand to desert nomads narrated over a slick holographic reconstruction of the battle. It showed the assembled Valarak fleet, a symbol of galactic dominance for millennia, and the pathetic, laughable cluster of human ships. Then, with pure showmanship, it showed the judgment of lances simply winking out of existence. The Argosy had isolated the energy signature left behind, a unique, high-energy causality echo that spoke of physics so heretical it made established galactic sciences look like cave paintings. Sources within the Syndicate traced this unprecedented event to a single vessel, the Scrapewing, a chemically propelled projectile corvette from the newly contacted species calling themselves humans. "Chemically propelled," muttered Davies, looking offended. "We're famous," observed someone on the bridge. "Infamous," Breaker corrected him, his voice a low rumble. "There's a difference." The montage cut to other reactions. A grim-faced Ashtil hegemony general stared at the data with profound respect and even deeper alarm. "A weapon that does not destroy but unhappens. This is not an instrument of war. It is a tool of celestial editing. The humans have become a cosmological predator overnight." Then came the Valarak, Dominion's official statement, a high-ranking minister, his face quivering with fury, declaring the footage a fabrication, a pathetic digital trick concocted by a cowardly species to hide their inevitable annihilation. It was the galactic equivalent of insisting you hadn't been knocked unconscious. You merely tripped and were resting your eyes on the canvas for a moment. No one was buying it. The judgment of lances was gone, and the Valarak Empire, for the first time in 1,000 years, looked vulnerable. Humiliated. Earth had gone from a backwater nuisance, a planetary system ripe for conquest, to the galaxy's resident boogeyman, the terrifying new player with an eraser weapon, the unpredictable primates who had brought a metaphysical crisis to a laser fight. "So," Captain Cross said to her crew, a dry, humorless smile touching her lips, "we're a galactic superpower now. Congratulations. Try not to let it go to your heads." Days later, while running dark and making patch repairs in the deep black, 3 blade-like ships materialized from nowhere, sleek, silver Ashtil warships that boxed the Scrapewing in while maintaining a conspicuously large buffer distance, as if afraid the little human corvette might sneeze and accidentally delete them from the timeline. The face that appeared on the communication screen was rugged and noble, belonging to a creature who looked like he'd been chiseled from a block of honor and gravitas. Heavy brow ridges, piercing dark eyes, and a formal set to his jaw. The Ashtil insignia on his collar identified him as Commander Borak. Captain Calliope Cross of the Earthship Scrapewing. Borak began, his voice a deep baritone that seemed to have its own gravity. He didn't sound hostile, he sounded reverent. The Ashtil hegemony extends its profound respect to you and your formidable crew. We would be honored if you would join us for a diplomatic conference on the neutral station, the Gutter. It was phrased as an invitation, but the 3 cruisers aimed at her hull made it clear it was a command wrapped in exquisite politeness. Borak and his crew were treating them with a cautious deference. One might show a toddler holding a live thermonuclear device. They were terrified. Callie's mind raced. They were out of miracle torpedoes. Their ship was held together with hope and emergency sealant. Their only weapon was a bluff the size of a gas giant. Time to see how far it would take them. We accept your invitation, Commander, she said with professional courtesy. We'll see you at the Gutter. The Gutter was a classic deep space entrepot, a sprawling, chaotic tangle of rotating rings, docking pylons, and jury-rigged habitats. Home to smugglers, merchants, mercenaries, and the occasional desperate diplomat, it smelled of ozone, exotic spices, and poor life choices. As the battered Scrapewing glided toward its assigned berth, Cawley could feel the station's eyes on them. The docking controller, a nervous four-eyed, arachnid-like creature, audibly sweated as he directed them to an isolated landing bay for privacy, for everyone else's continued existence. You mean, Breaker grunted. He was right, they were being quarantined. The feeling intensified when they disembarked. A hulking freighter pilot physically recoiled, yanking his loading drone back as if the Scrapewing might be contagious with reality failure. When Breaker, in his heavy combat gear with his glowing cybernetic eye, stepped through a crowded cantina doorway, the entire bar went dead silent. A table of loud, boisterous Valorak mercenaries suddenly found their drinks to be the most fascinating objects in the known universe. A trio of insectoid gamblers froze mid-deal. The bartender polished a single spot on a glass with the laser focus of a bomb disposal expert. Cawley felt the weight of their reputation settle on her shoulders. They weren't just a crew anymore. In the eyes of the galaxy, they were walking, talking doomsday devices. Before they could even reach the Ashtil delegation sector, they were intercepted by an Argosy Syndicate member who slid out of an alcove with unervingly fluid movements. Tall, thin, and wearing a suit that shimmered with a subtle energy field, probably costing more than the Scrapewing's entire operational budget. His smile didn't reach any of his 4 constantly shifting eyes. Captain Cross, a distinct pleasure. I am Veng, an ambassador for the Argosy Syndicate. He gestured toward a luxurious private lounge. If you would grant me a moment of your time. Inside, Veng offered them synth ale in elegant self-chilling glasses and launched into his pitch wealth, advanced technology, a military alliance, and protection from all enemies, real or imagined. All in exchange for one little thing, the schematics for the fracture torpedo. As Veng spoke, Fenris was completely distracted, his eyes darting around the room, absorbing the silent shimmering holographic emitters, the elegant power conduits, the phase conjugate architecture of the air purifiers. Incredible, he muttered, oblivious to the high-stakes negotiation. They're using a nested Faraday cage to stabilize the particle stream. That's brilliant. If we could adapt that for the causality initiator's containment field, we could increase the yield by at least 2 orders of magnitude without risking a premature reality. Cascade. Cawley saw the intense, unguarded focus on his face. He was a genius who thought out loud with no filter. He could give away their one and only secret without realizing it. The secret being that they had no idea how the weapon really worked and had gotten stupendously, cosmically lucky. She cut Veng off mid-sentence. "We're not for sale," she said, her voice colder than the vacuum outside. Vin's smile tightened imperceptibly. "A pity. Alliances are so much cleaner than acquisitions. Secrets have a way of getting out, or being extracted." Kali issued new orders as they left. "Fenris, you are permitted to look at the shiny things, but if you open your mouth to say anything more complex, then where's the restroom? I will personally weld it shut. Breaker, you're his shadow. Don't let him talk to anyone who looks too smart or too rich. This whole station smells like credits and treachery." Her caution was well-founded. While Fenris was captivated by a back-alley stall selling illegal fold drive modifications, he was dragged into a grimy service corridor by a hulking Forlan bounty hunter who slammed him against the wall. "Syndicate pays well for smart little monkeys," the alien growled, one massive hand closing around Fenris's throat. Before pressure could be applied, Breaker materialized from the shadows. The ensuing brawl was visceral and ugly, a brutal clash of metal and flesh. Breaker moved with terrifying, compact lethality, using the bounty hunter's own arm as a shield against a plasma pistol shot, parrying vibroblades with his reinforced forearm. The fight ended as quickly as it began, with Breaker driving a combat knife up under the alien's rib cage before shoving the gurgling creature into a pile of refuse containers. Barely breathing heavily, he turned to Fenris, who was hyperventilating against the wall. Finding no injuries, Breaker tossed him a protein bar without a word. The message was clear. The galaxy wasn't just watching them anymore. It was actively trying to gut them for parts. Back aboard the Scrapewing, Fenris was a whirlwind of frantic activity, hunched over his analysis console and poring over sensor data from the initial battle. "It just can't be noise," he muttered, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "An event that energetic, that fundamental, it has to leave a resonance." He was focused on the causality echo, the unique signature their accidental weapon had left behind, buried deep within the background radiation. He'd found something, a faint repeating signal. He spent hours filtering it, running it through every translation matrix he had, certain it had to be a distress call. He peeled back layers of interference, his excitement growing as the signal became cleaner, more defined. After running one final decryption algorithm, the static fell away. For a split second, a distorted, hate-filled voice in the Valorak language cut through the speaker, clear as a bell. "We'll burn your world to cinders." It was Vorlag. Fenris recoiled from his console as if electrocuted, his blood running cold. "I'm alive," he whispered to the empty engineering deck, his mind reeling with the impossible, horrifying truth. "You're alive. And you're broadcasting your vengeful thoughts across dimensions." Meanwhile, the bridge of the Judgment of Lances was a hellscape of red emergency lighting and groaning stressed metal. Grand Marshal Vorlag, his face a thunderous mask of rage, smashed a console with his armored fist. Outside the main viewport, there were no stars, only a nauseating non-Euclidean chaos of twisting light and impossible geometry. Colors with no names swirled in fractal patterns that hurt the brain to contemplate. This was the subfold, the space between spaces. The mighty warship was trapped in a prison of broken physics, but it was not destroyed. Its powerful structural integrity field and reality anchors held, creating a small, fragile bubble of stable reality in the heart of the madness. But they couldn't maintain this stability indefinitely. The internal fields were draining core, reserves at an alarming rate. When the science officer reported, detecting a lingering weakness in the dimensional wall, a scar in reality left by the primitives, a slow, predatory grin spread across Vorlag's face. They left a door, he snarled. "We will not just escape. We will tear our way back through the very wound they gave us." Despite warnings that forcing the scar open could destabilize their reality anchors and destroy them, Vorlag was consumed by vengeance. "Your caution is cowardice," he roared. "My honor demands retribution. My very soul demands it, to be erased from the histories that I will not allow. We will return, and their world will be the pyre upon which I reclaim my glory." Back on the Scrapewing, Fenris laid out his horrifying discovery for Colley and Breaker. "They're alive and they're angry, and they're trying to claw their way back," he finished, bringing up a complex simulation showing a shimmering, unstable bubble of energy. The torpedo hadn't created a stable pocket dimension. It had torn a wound in spacetime, and reality was trying to heal itself. His models showed the dimensional rift would collapse in less than a week. When it did, all the mass and energy they'd crammed in there, an entire Valarak dreadnought with its singularity core, would be violently ejected back into their universe. "It won't come back as a ship," Colley observed. Fenris shook his head. "It'll come back as a supernova of pure spite that could scrub this whole sector clean. We're sitting on a time bomb of our own making. We have to get them back here now, where we can control the outcome. They had to save their greatest enemy to save themselves." FENRIs formulated a plan equal parts brilliant, insane, and pure Fenris. "We have to fish them out. If we hit the causality scar with another fracture event, we can pry the wound back open for a few seconds, long enough for them to come through. It'll be like chumming the water for a very, very angry shark." When Colley pointed out they'd fired 9 of their 10 torpedoes, Fenris revealed a sheepish secret. He'd kept the original prototype, TO-1, against every regulation. It was unstable, with nightmare targeting and leaking chronotin particles, but its theoretical yield was much higher. Colley requested a private meeting with Commander Boric aboard his flagship, the Blade of Intent. She proposed an alliance. "Our weapon is a tactical transport device. We displaced the Judgment of Lances, and now they are about to return, enraged and unpredictable. Help us set a trap for them when they return, and the Ashtil hegemony can share in the glory of destroying the flagship of your greatest rival. We will bring the beast to the killing ground. You will help us butcher it." Boric was skeptical. "Your weapon makes fleets disappear. Tell me, Captain, can it make a star disappear?" Colley met his gaze without blinking. "We haven't found anything it can't." The sheer confidence of her bluff, combined with the strategic logic of eliminating the Judgment of Lances, convinced him. "We will hunt with you, human," he declared, suggesting the Azure Nebula as the perfect killing ground. Its dense electromagnetic interference would hide their fleets, leaving the enemy blind when they emerged. Inside the swirling ethereal blue clouds of the nebula, the tiny Scrapewing and 3 massive Ashtil cruisers lay in wait, silent and dark. In engineering, Fenris frantically jury-rigged the prototype torpedo to the ship's primary power conduits, bypassing safety protocols that existed for very good reasons. On the bridge, Colley stood at her command chair, watching the swirling azure clouds. In the armory, Breaker methodically sharpened a massive combat knife, a silent promise of the violence to come. A violent, jagged tear ripped open in the heart of the nebula. The colossal, battle-scarred form of the Judgment of Lances surged through, its weapons already glowing. Vorleg's voice, full of triumphant hatred, boomed through all communication channels. "I have returned from the hell you cast me into. Now I shall bring that hell to you." Colley leaned into her comms, her voice a calm, deadly whisper. "Light him up." The Azure Nebula erupted. The Ashtil cruisers and the Scrapewing unleashed an overwhelming barrage. The Judgment of Lance's shields buckled but held, and its return fire was devastating. "Their targeting is too good." Fenris, "I need a path," Holly yelled. "Feeding you their targeting cycles now," Fenris replied. "They have a predictive algorithm, but it's got a flaw. There's a blind spot in the coverage every 1.7 seconds, but it's only a few meters wide." Holly didn't hesitate. She pushed the Scrapewing's engines past every safety limit, weaving an impossible path with Fenris's constant stream of numbers and vectors in her ear. Plasma bolts seared past the cockpit, a flicker of hope every 1.7 seconds. She threaded the needle. Breaker became a whirlwind of destruction, manning the ship's point defense cannons manually. He bypassed the targeting computer, his cybernetic eye and augmented reflexes tracking and blasting away at the Valarac ship's turrets with inhuman speed, giving Holly the opening she needed. She saw it, a long maintenance trench leading directly to an exposed glowing drive core vent. She dove the Scrapewing into the trench. "Almost there," Fenris shouted. "I've got a solid lock on the drive core vent." Holly lined up the shot and fired. The lone, unstable prototype torpedo streaked away, diving straight into the exposed vent of the Valarac drive core. It didn't explode. T-01 latched onto the core's housing and unleashed a single focused pulse of spatial distortion. It wasn't a bomb. It was a tuning fork, striking the exact resonant frequency of the Valarac singularity core and creating a feedback loop of impossible physics that the reality warping engine turned inward. The judgment of Lances shuddered violently. Its lights flickered out. From the core outward, the mighty warship began to dissolve, not into fire and shrapnel, but into a silent, beautiful, incandescent lattice of light. Its physical form unraveled, atoms breaking down into pure information, which then collapsed in on itself. It was an implosion of physics, a silent, breathtaking spectacle of annihilation that left absolutely nothing behind. The battle was over. The crews of the Ashtil ships watched in stunned, reverent silence. On the bridge of the Scrapewing, Holly leaned back in her command chair, the adrenaline finally fading. Fenris stared at the empty torpedo launcher on his screen. They had done it, faced the impossible twice and won. They had cemented humanity's godlike reputation, and they had just fired their last miracle. Holly let out a slow, deliberate breath and allowed a small, tired smirk to touch her lips. "Well," she said to her exhausted, triumphant crew, "I guess we're not bluffing anymore." Ensign Davies, who had begun this fight with a voice several octaves higher than regulation, let out a long, slow breath. When he spoke, his voice was steady as bedrock. "All hostile contacts are gone, Captain. The space where the judgment was is clean. Cleaner than vacuum." A priority call cut through. Commander Borik's chiseled face appeared on the main screen. The Ashtil warrior, a being carved from honor and gravitas, looked utterly, profoundly shaken. "Captain Cross," he began, his deep voice hushed with reverence usually reserved for gods or cosmic phenomena. "The hegemony archives speak of legends, races that could shatter planets, empires that could extinguish stars. But we have no stories for this. You did not just destroy a warship, you unwrote it from existence, with a single shot from a ship held together with, by my scans, courage and engine tape." Holly leaned forward, her exhaustion of physical weight, but her spirit soaring. She looked at the stoic alien commander and saw the face of the entire galaxy staring back in awe. "We had a problem, Commander," she said simply, her voice carrying the calm weight of absolute victory. "We solved it." Borak was silent for a long moment, his piercing eyes searching hers. A slow, incredulous smile spread across his rugged face. "Other species solve problems," he said, his voice resonating with a newfound truth. "You humans, you find the fundamental laws of the universe that are causing your problem, and you solve them instead." He gave a short, sharp nod of ultimate respect, and the transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew of the Scrapewing alone in the quiet heart of the nebula they had made their own. They were a tiny, battered corvette, adrift in the vast, hostile dark. But they and the species they represented were no longer the underdogs. They were the storm. They were the anomaly. The galaxy had finally learned the most vital lesson about the loud, stubborn primates from Sector 7G. When their backs are against the wall and all hope is lost, they don't just find a way to fight back. They find a way to break reality itself.